You didn't renovate your house. You didn't add a second floor. You didn't suddenly start living in a mansion.
So here's the question. Why did your property tax bill just explode? Across America, homeowners are opening envelopes that feel less like a bill and more like a warning. Same house, same street, same life. But suddenly, thousands of dollars more every single year, just for the privilege of staying where you already live. Property taxes were supposed to pay for schools, roads, and firefighters. Instead, they've quietly turned into a system that punishes stability and rewards timing. If you bought early, you're protected. If you bought late or inherited wrong, you're paying the price. And here's the part no one tells you. This isn't accidental. The system is reacting to something bigger. Home prices exploded. Politicians panicked. And now states are scrambling. Some experimenting, some breaking, some doing things so strange they feel made up. So what happens when the tax system meant to fund communities starts pushing people out of them? Stay with me, because what's happening next could affect your house, your future, and whether owning a home is still worth it. To understand why property taxes are suddenly crushing people, you have to separate what changed from what never did. What changed is obvious. After 2020, home prices didn't just rise. They detached from reality. Low interest rates, supply shortages, migration, and speculation pushed prices up at a speed most local tax systems were never designed to handle.
What didn't change is how property taxes work.
Most states don't ask whether you can afford your tax bill. They don't care if your income stayed flat. They don't care if you're retired, self-employed, or one layoff away from trouble. They look at one thing only: assessed value. When your home value jumps 30, 40, 50%, your tax bill follows automatically. No vote, no new law, no debate. It's baked into the math. That's the core problem. Property tax is treated like a wealth tax, but it behaves like a cash flow tax. Your house might be worth more on paper, but that value is illiquid. You can't spend it. You can't eat it. And unless you sell, it doesn't help you pay the bill that just arrived. This is why the pain feels so sudden. The system didn't gradually become unfair. It snapped. A structure built for slow, predictable appreciation was hit with the fastest housing inflation in modern history. And here's the political trap. Local governments depend on property taxes. Schools, fire departments, police, infrastructure, none of that scales down easily. So when values rise, the system doesn't ask whether it should collect more. It simply does. That's how you end up with a paradox. Communities become more desirable, and the people who built them can no longer afford to stay. This is the pressure cooker every state is now dealing with. And when enough voters feel trapped in their own homes, governments don't respond calmly. They react. In the next part, we'll look at what those reactions actually look like, and why some states are experimenting with ideas that would have sounded unthinkable just a few years ago. When pressure builds long enough, systems don't reform politely. They lurch. That's exactly what we're seeing now. Across the country, states aren't calmly fine-tuning property taxes. They're experimenting, sometimes thoughtfully, sometimes desperately, with ideas that would have been politically radioactive just a few years ago. Let's start with Montana. Montana looked at soaring home values and said, what if we treated property like income? Their answer was a graduated property tax. The first chunk of a home's value is taxed lightly. But as the value climbs, especially into luxury territory, the tax rate rises sharply. On paper, it sounds fair. If your house is worth more, you pay more. If you're sitting on $1 million asset, you can afford a higher rate. This is property tax borrowing the logic of progressive income tax. But here's the problem. A house isn't income. It doesn't generate cash just because it's expensive. And suddenly, asset-rich but cash-poor homeowners are being taxed like high earners, even if their paychecks never change. Now compare that to North Dakota, which went in the opposite direction. North Dakota didn't try to fix property taxes. They tried to delete them. The proposal was simple. Abolish property taxes entirely and replace the revenue with oil money. No more tax bills. No more assessments. Just fund the system with natural resource income. It didn't pass, and for good reason. Betting schools and local governments on volatile commodity revenue is like quitting your job because you won $50 at a casino. But the important part isn't that it failed. It's that it was seriously considered. These two states tell us everything we need to know. One tries to make property taxes more aggressive. The other tries to wipe them out. That's not coordination. That's panic expressed through policy. And neither approach solves the real issue. Property taxes are being forced to do a job they were never designed for in a housing market this distorted. Next, we need to look at the real fuel behind all of this. The tax shock hitting ordinary homeowners even in states that haven't reformed anything at all. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most of the states making headlines right now didn't change their tax laws at all. The pain came anyway. In places like Colorado, homeowners have seen property tax bills jump more than 50% in just a few years. In Georgia, it's a similar story. And in Florida, taxes surged even as people flooded in, chasing affordability that quietly disappeared after the closing documents were signed. This is what makes the situation feel so unfair. These homeowners didn't vote for higher taxes. Their city councils didn't pass dramatic new legislation. In many cases, nothing changed at all, except the number on a spreadsheet. Property taxes are built on assessments. When the market explodes, assessments follow. And when assessments rise, the bill shows up automatically. No warning. No gradual phase-in, just a larger withdrawal from your bank account every year. For many families, this isn't about luxury or lifestyle creep. It's math colliding with reality. A few thousand extra dollars a year might not sound catastrophic on paper, but stacked on top of insurance increases, higher utility costs, and everyday inflation, it becomes suffocating. This is why anger spread so fast. People weren't reacting to ideology. They were reacting to shock. They felt blindsided, trapped in homes that were supposedly worth more, yet harder to afford than ever. Selling meant leaving their community. Staying meant paying a rising penalty for stability. And this is the key insight. Tax shock creates political chaos. When enough voters feel ambushed at the same time, pressure builds instantly. Not slowly, not rationally, instantly. That's when lawmakers stop thinking long-term and start reaching for whatever lever looks like relief. This tax shock is the gasoline. Everything else, the strange reforms, the extreme proposals, the messy fixes, comes after the match is lit. And once you understand that, the next part becomes impossible to ignore. How the system quietly favors some homeowners while systematically punishing others, even when their houses look exactly the same. Now we get to the part that makes this feel less like a broken system and more like a rigged one. Imagine two houses, same street, same floor plan, same square footage, built in the same year. One family pays $4,000 a year in property taxes. The other pays $20,000. Not because the second house is better, not because the owners are richer, but because they bought or inherited the home at the wrong time. This isn't hypothetical. This is how the system actually works in states like California. California perfected a version of property tax policy that quietly sorts people by age and timing. Longtime homeowners are protected by artificially low tax assessments locked in decades ago. New buyers and many heirs aren't. Here's the twist. If you're over a certain age, you can sell your home, buy a more expensive one, and keep your old, tiny tax bill. You can do this multiple times. Mobility is rewarded. But if you inherit your parents' home and don't immediately move in and declare it your primary residence, the tax bill resets to market value. Overnight, a few $100s a year can turn into tens of thousands. The message is clear, even if it's never said out loud. Staying put is fine, unless you're young. This creates a strange and toxic dynamic. Neighborhoods freeze in time. Homes stop circulating naturally. New families are priced out not by the mortgage, but by the tax bill that comes after. Property taxes, in theory, are neutral. In practice, they've become a tool that quietly transfers advantage based on when you entered the system, not how responsibly you live in it. And this isn't just unfair. It's economically corrosive. It locks people into houses they might otherwise sell. It discourages mobility. It deepens generational divides that already exist. Which brings us to the next stage of the story. When these distortions become impossible to ignore, governments don't admit the foundation is flawed. They reach for shortcuts. When a system is visibly failing, there are two options. You can rebuild the foundation, or you can hide the cracks. Most states chose the second one. Take Florida. After years of rapidly rising home values, Florida finally adjusted one of its key tax exemptions to inflation. That sounds technical, even responsible, until you realize how late it is. For decades, the exemption stayed flat while prices soared. Indexing it to inflation doesn't fix the problem. It just slows the bleeding slightly after the damage is already done. Then there's Texas. Texas didn't tweak the math. It opened the checkbook. Lawmakers poured tens of billions of dollars into raising the homestead exemption, the portion of your home's value that can't be taxed. For homeowners, it feels like relief. For the system, it's a workaround. Revenue still has to come from somewhere. And exemptions don't reform incentives. They just delay the reckoning. It's the policy equivalent of paying your credit card bill with another credit card and calling it savings. And then there's Ohio, which accidentally revealed something even more uncomfortable. Ohio discovered that many school districts weren't strapped for cash at all. They were sitting on massive reserves, billions of dollars, collected from property taxes and left unused. Some districts had stockpiled so much money that the state stepped in and forced them to give it back. Think about what that means. Homeowners were told taxes had to keep rising to fund schools. Meanwhile, the money was quietly piling up, untouched. These fixes all look different, but they share the same DNA. None of them confront the core issue. Property taxes scale automatically, but human incomes don't. So instead of rethinking how we tax housing, states adjust exemptions, inject cash, or retroactively admit they collected too much. The result isn't reform. It's stabilization theater, just enough movement to calm voters without changing the structure that caused the problem. And when you zoom out, a pattern becomes clear. This isn't a system being modernized, it's a system being kept alive, barely. Which brings us to the final question. If the rules aren't going to be fixed anytime soon, how do individuals survive inside them? So where does all of this leave us? We've seen a system built for a slower, simpler housing market collide with the fastest run-up in home prices in modern history. We've seen states experiment, panic, patch, and improvise. And we've seen how property taxes, meant to fund communities, can end up quietly pushing people out of them. In some places, the dysfunction is subtle. In others, it's impossible to ignore. In fact, in Pennsylvania, there are counties that haven't reassessed property values since the early 1970s. That means some homeowners today are paying taxes based on valuations set when gas cost cents a gallon and The Godfather was still in theaters. The system isn't just strained. In some areas, it's frozen in time, yet still sending bills twice a year. And that's the real takeaway. This isn't about one bad law or one bad state. It's about a framework that no longer matches reality. Property taxes rise automatically. Incomes don't. Stability gets penalized. Timing gets rewarded. So what can you actually do? First, know your local rules. Property tax policy is changing unevenly, often quietly, and sometimes retroactively. Second, and this matters more than most people realize, always appeal your property tax assessment. Many people win. They just never try. And finally, zoom out. If the system treats homeownership like a liability, it forces a hard question. Should the assets you own only cost you money, or should they pay you back? That doesn't mean reckless investing. It doesn't mean rushing into decisions. And it definitely doesn't mean this video is financial advice, because it's not. This is analysis, not a prescription. Your situation is unique, and you should always do your own research or talk to a professional before making big financial moves. But understanding the system matters, because when you understand how incentives really work, you stop being surprised by outcomes. Now, I want to hear from you. Has your property tax bill changed dramatically in the last few years? Do you feel protected or punished by the system where you live? Let me know in the comments. I read them. And if you want more clear, no-hype breakdowns of the forces shaping money, housing, and the economy, subscribe to the channel. This is what we do here. We don't chase headlines. We follow the incentives. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.